Hi, my name's Graham Greasley. I live in Chirk. I'm a local amateur historian. I've written a couple of books with a colleague on local history things. I also have, for the past maybe 40 years, been collecting artifacts, pictures, documents to do with Chirk. A big collection, and I'm passionate about how our history all interrelates from the coal mining, the housing and everything else. So it's the social aspect of our history as well. Chirk Aqueduct was completed in 1801 as part of the World Heritage Site to link up with the canal coming from Froncysyllte through into Shropshire. It was an important key route for transporting goods out of the area. When it was first opened, it was opened in, as I say, 1801, before the Froncysyllte was opened, and they were actually using the canal southbound into Shropshire before the rest of the canal was completed. It's a key part. It was a key part of the structure of the network for getting items, coal, slate, etc., out of the area from the coal mines that we had in Chirk. It's an impressive structure. It straddles the border, the Chirk Valley. It's probably the only one of its kind that actually straddles two countries, England and Wales. Chirk sits on the border of Shropshire and England, and it actually sits on what was the route of the old A5, which came from Marble Arch in London through to Holyhead. And so it's been a key place on that route for the last probably several hundred years, probably since the Roman times. When the canal came here, it had another dimension to the area, but also Chirk's known for the castle, the 13th century castle, which sits up on the hill overlooking Chirk. Over the past couple of hundred years, Chirk has developed with the coal mining expanding, bringing more people into the area. That saw a need for more housing, so we had a Chirk Green estate was built where lots of the miners lived, and since then it's also developed further. The mines closed in 1968. Other industries have opened in the area, and that's brought really a diverse group of people together. They've travelled from other parts of the country that have come here to work in these different factories. Obviously, Chirk being the aqueduct being part of the World Heritage Site has seen a big influx of visitors to look at the canal, the aqueduct, etc. And also we've always had lots of visitors coming to Chirk Castle. However, a lot of visitors make a day to go to the castle or maybe just stop at the aqueduct without coming to the village, where we've got a church that was built in the 1100s. We've got a historic inn that dates back 400 years. And we've got a war memorial that's quite iconic, and a building, the old school, which was designed by Augustus Pugin. Social history is very much a part of what I like to research. It's the relationship of all the people that have come to work here. My relatives included moved here around about 200 years ago. Families intermarry. The more families have come into the area. So it's the whole thing about the people, where they lived, where they worked, the schools, the local hospital that we had, which was built originally in the 1920s, to deal with miners that were suffering horrific injuries. And so the whole thing, there's no one aspect of history that to me stands on its own. It's the whole thing, the big jigsaw that all fits together. Chirk's connected to Froncysyllte and Trevor by the road network, but also the canal which runs through Chirk into Fron and into Trevor. But more than that, we have a bus route and we have trains that run. But the people as well have moved between Chirk, Kevin, particularly when Monsanto was operating. You know, there were 2,000 people there in the late 60s. Lots of people from Chirk worked there. Lots of people from Kevin worked, and Rambin worked in our local mines as well. So we've got all that interaction, and on top of that, we had the local football teams. We've still got local football teams. So guys from Chirk would play for Kevin. Kevin would play for Chirk. They always in a rivalry between the two teams going back many, many years. And Chirk has a long history of providing some top players for some of the major clubs. I've been collecting loads of artefacts, many of which are in situ here on display, because I felt we needed somewhere for these things to be displayed. We established it in 2025 on VE Days when we opened it, and we had a display about a lot of the people that were in World War II and some from World War I as well. So it's somewhere now that people can bring artefacts. We have several important artefacts brought in, an old phone from the local undertakers, various bits and pieces, and it will take time to establish, but it is important that we have somewhere where this information can be stored for future generations to come along and have a look.
My name is Keith Sinclair. I live in the village of Froncysyllte, or Vron. I'm a local community councillor, I'm secretary of the local community centre, and I'm also chair of the community advisory group of the project linking with the Canal and River Trust. Vron has a fantastic range of history, but I want to focus on one particular aspect, Cross Street Aqueduct. Very few people realise there's an aqueduct between the major Froncysyllte Aqueduct and the major Chirk Aqueduct, and that's Cross Street Aqueduct. Why is this important? It's important because it brings together the canal, the quarry industry and the railways. And in a very small place, you can see how they all interact. Cross Street initially was simply a way a farmer moved his cattle, his sheep from one field to another. The reason it's now significant is, of course, the canal goes over what is now the aqueduct. Therefore, the farmer had to move their cattle under there, and that's why we now have the route under the aqueduct. It's important because it shows how the canal interacted with other aspects of the village, and in particular, the great beauty in one sense of the aqueduct is the way it brings the history of the quarrying industry, linking it to the railways, linking it to the canal. I think Vron's special because many people do not realise how important a little village it is. It's a village, a few hundred people, 600 people, but think it through. Think of the ways in which you can go through Vron. You've got Offarsdyke Path going through Vron. You've got the St Winifred Pilgrimage Trail from the 800s going through Vron. You've got Telford's Holyhead Road going through Vron, and of course the canal that we're focusing on in some ways today. So for a small place, it's actually been the centre of a fantastic range of development. Many tourists believe when they come into Vron that it's to do with the coal industry, and it isn't really. Many Vron residents came and worked in places like Black Park Colliery, but the coal mines weren't in Vron, it was the quarrying. And what's interesting to me about Cross Street and about Vron is how that interacts with developments subsequently. So you've got at the top of the village, where many tourists don't go, the quarries still there. You've got the rails still visible coming down from the quarries, and then of course you've got the canal and the old railway lines bringing that to fruition, taking away the limestone, bringing in the coal, taking it to and from other parts of Wales and across down into Shropshire in England. And of course, the canal originally was intended not just to go across the aqueduct to Trevor, but to link up with Cheshire and Manchester. The heritage of Vron is a very important heritage, and it's a heritage of the ordinary working people. Vron is not a village for kings and queens. It's not a village where many rich people lived. It's a village where ordinary working families had the families, brought the children up, they sent them to school, they went to work. And it's a village that, because of that, encompasses heritage in the best way, the heritage of the vast majority of the people, which is they don't live in palaces, they don't live in millionaires' mansions, they live in ordinary houses, have ordinary lives, And I think that's actually far more interesting than those who live in a far more rarefied atmosphere. I think the different villages that we are focused on, the links are in many ways porous. So for example, you have a family like the family I've married into, who are based in Vron, but also have links to Whitehurst, the railways there, and now several members of the family living in Chirk. So a good example is my wife's grandfather, who was a railway worker at Whitehurst, had connections with Vron, but is now buried in Chirk cemetery. So the links are there, and they go beyond Chirk, they go beyond Vron to Trevor and on to Llangollen. And one of the things that I find really interesting is how all those villages interact. So a young person might play sport for any of the villages. A young person might go to the Drama Society in Llangollen, or back in the day to Kevin Dramatic Society. So there are links all the way across. People marry people from other villages, people have family members buried in cemeteries in different villages. They're not little villages that are hermetically sealed. They all interrelate, and they all end up being part of the rich tapestry of the canal and its surroundings.
Hi, my name's Sue Kempster. I am the current chair of Llangollen Rural Community Council. My involvement started with the World Heritage Site before the inscription. The Community Council was invited by Wrexham Council to take part in celebrations for the bicentenary, and then I was hooked. Then came World Heritage, and the community as a whole were fully involved and fully engaged with all the preparation. We were so excited about the prospect of having World Heritage status for a bridge, in our opinion, across two of our villages. There is 11 miles on the World Heritage Site, as we know, but the Froncysyllte Aqueduct is the jewel in the crown. As part of my volunteering for the World Heritage Group, I started up and chaired the Friend of the World Heritage Site. A group of people that came from all 11 miles of the site. As a community across Llangollen Rural, we have continued to support the World Heritage Site in any way that we can. As a community council, we put in a path that was funded by the AONB that connected the canal to one of our community centres. This path along the canal is well used. It's called the Clinker Path. And during the excavation of the path, we discovered that the old foundries that had been close by had thrown their waste away. That's what we call the clinker. That the brickworks that had been local had been throwing their bricks away in the same woodland, and that the council had even tipped on that site at some time. So we actually put a path through a wood that contained 3 waste product tips, which was actually quite exciting because they were historic tips. We have also, as a community council, rebuilt a wall for the JC Edwards site. JC Edwards was a manufacturer of brick and terracotta that was renowned worldwide. And one of his sites was actually right on the edge of the Froncysyllte Aqueduct. It was a site that had originally been part of the foundries that had been there to create the metal for the trough that runs across the aqueduct. The heritage of our community is really important to me. The Froncysyllte Aqueduct World Heritage Site celebrated the industrial past of our community. People who visit now visit because it's a pretty place to live. When I look back at my parents, my mother with a WI, my father working in industry very close by, my grandparents who were brought here from the potteries to do the glazes for JC Edwards, they were all here because of the industry. And I think it's really important that we celebrate this industry more. It's important for my parents, my grandparents, and other families who've always lived here, that we protect what we had and share it with the new generation that's coming along. The project we're now working on with Canal and River Trust is there to protect the heritage that we've started. The people who are involved in this project are keen to protect what we've had and encourage younger people to join us in exploring what's there, exploring once again what was discovered when we had inscription from the World Heritage Site. Everything is listed, everything historic is there, but it's forgotten. And we need now to bring it back to life. And places such as this museum in Chirk, the museum in Kevin Mauer, and the museum in Llangollen are very central to collating this information and showing people what's there to encourage them to enjoy it more.